Oh hi, this is Angie. I'm a registered midwife and I'm calling because I have some serious concerns about the midwifery profession. Staffing levels are unsafe, morale is at an all-time low and midwives across the country are beyond breaking point. I am observing physical and psychological harm happening to midwives and I would like to escalate this. So just to give you the background, we have no safe staffing levels or ratios outside of intrapartum in established labour settings. We now have a 40% of induction of labour rate and nearly a 50% caesarean birth rate. This requires double the care provision both pre and postnatally, but also during that labour and birth setting. Increasing medicalisation requires more, not less staff, and there are no national benchmarks or frameworks, meaning business cases at local level to employ and find money for more registered midwives is more challenging because nobody has any standards to work towards. In relation to acuity apps, some trusts have them, some trusts don't. Those that have them cite quite major concerns regarding acuity apps, particularly during intrapartum settings where babies are not counted within the acuity figures. In addition, data can also be lost because there isn't the time to necessarily input all the data into these acuity apps when it is incredibly busy. There are no national frameworks in England to be able to benchmark against for registered midwife to patient ratios outside of the intrapartum settings. This provides no levers for trusts to be able to work towards. The Mid-Staffs report highlighted that there is a much higher mortality rate in patios when nurses are caring for more than 8 patients at one time. Yet in postnatal wards from a Freedom of Information Act that I have submitted across the country highlights that most postnatal wards are running at one midwife to an average of 16 patients when you include the babies. The problem being no trust across the UK includes a baby as a patient in that postnatal period. The worst staffing models are one midwife to between 20 and 22 patients when the babies are included. In addition, there are no safe staffing ratios for women who are having an induction of labour. With doubling induction of labour rates, units are running on one midwife to 8 women or people having an induction of labour. That is potentially 8 women or people going into early labour requiring support, care and safety for their baby through additional checks, additional observations and monitoring, who may not be having the right care recommendations appropriately given because the midwife is overrun. Every report into previous maternity failings highlights that staffing is a factor to poor outcomes, yet no report has enforced nor stated what the midwife to family, woman, person or baby ratio should be. No report has enforced that babies should be classed as patients in that postnatal period. Poor staffing equals unsafe working conditions. This means that there are less care hours to be able to provide safe standards of care to women and people, meaning that things get missed, mistakes happen, poor outcomes happen in reality. The lack of safe staffing ratios mean that staff work well above their hours, they are unable to have breaks or take them incredibly late, and this contributes to the poor outcomes for women, people and their families within maternity settings across the board. The lack of safe staff to patient ratios also mean that working time directives are not complied with. Unsafe staffing ratios increases incivility, and staffing is a major contributing factor in much of the incivility incidents, which contributes to poor culture, poor escalation within maternity services, which again contributes to poor outcomes for patients. Due to the challenging conditions, good hard-working midwives are walking away from the profession. I've done a full assessment of the situation. The main symptoms I'm observing are that midwives are physically, mentally and emotionally burned out. There is widespread moral injury with midwives carrying the guilt and shame of the system's failings. Retention is massively dropping, with around 700 to 800 midwives leaving every 6 months here in England. And the most common reasons that midwives and nurses leave the register after retirement is ill health, burnout, staffing and workloads, and these are all linked and solvable by systems having rigorous staffing mandates and safe ratios of care. Immediate intervention is needed to acknowledge the scale of harm which is happening both to women, people, their families and midwives who are working in the system. We need the maternity review, governments and unions to be able to implement safe staffing ratios and putting this into frameworks, mandates and standards similar to what Canada and many states in Australia currently have. We need every single baby who is born to be counted as a patient from the moment they are born into this world, instead of their mums who are recovering from birth to be expected to provide observations and care to their babies. We need the intrapartum acuity apps to start counting the baby care needs in intrapartum settings. We need to start recording and escalating every single missed break or break taken too late into a shift as a red flag event that is escalated to Trust Board and national bodies of healthcare. We need community midwives to have safe community caseload numbers to support continuity of care to improve the outcomes overall and foster those trusting relationships and restore confidence in the maternity services. We need to start caring for the midwives and maternity support workers and healthcare professionals on the front line, because when we start providing care to our staff, we start improving care overall to our patients. We need safe staffing ratios, psychological support, safe working environments, the ability to be able to take breaks, and the ability to be able to have adequate rest times in between shifts, so that we change the toxic silent culture where midwives are not listened to for advocating for safe staffing, safe ratios, and safe standards of care for families. It is time for the harm to stop. We need this maternity review to listen to us in order to be able to change maternity services for the better. Sign Leah Hazard's petition, write to your MP, engage within the maternity review report, put in your thoughts, add in safe staffing ratios and what you personally think that they should be within your maternity services, how many midwives there should be to patient ratios within the maternity feedback report. I will link them within my bio. Safe staffing saves lives and improves care for everybody. And a big shout out to the Mindful Nurse. Go and follow her. She's been giving me the ability to use her script that she used for nurses and adapt it to the needs of the midwifery profession.